Playing Nirvana.
The Cobain 50.
Nirvana.
Kurt Cobain's top 50 albums.
Nirvana.
From listener-powered KEXP.
This is the Cobain 50 from listener-powered KEXP. I'm Dusty Henry.
And I'm Martin Douglas. This week, Dusty dives into the two albums from Butthole Surfers on Kurt's list. PP the Sailor, a.k.a. Butthole Surfers from 1983, and Locust Abortion Technician from 1987.
Bring the whole family. We're having a party. Big shout out to the FCC as well.
I feel like part of the genius of Butthole Surfers and these albums in particular is that they very narrowly avoid FCC regulations.
Yeah.
Like the hammer is not going to come down on us, but we're getting very close to the line and referencing some of these titles.
It's like the music equivalent of I'm not touching you.
I think that's the perfect opportunity to jump into this episode. Without further ado, here is Dusty on Butthole Surfers, the EP, a.k.a. PP the Sailor, and the album, Locust Abortion Technician.
Some bands help us see things in ourselves. They channel our grief, our longing. They give voice to the unspeakable truths of the universe. When our words fail us, these bands are there to be our spiritual guides. But some bands are Butthole Surfers. It's just a name that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Butthole Surfers. I kind of honestly hate saying it, but we're going to be saying it a lot here. But you really couldn't pick a better name for a band that's as absurd and as experimental as they are. So let's just get used to it now. Butthole Surfers. Butthole Surfers. Butthole Surfers.
It's showtime.
In Michael Lazarad's phenomenal book, Our Band Could Be Your Life, he opens up the section of Butthole Surfers with a quote from lead singer Gibby Haynes. An interviewer from Melody Maker asks, "Are Butthole Surfers closer to God or Satan?" Haynes replies, "God, definitely. Why take the chance?" The absurdity of the question, the quick wit of Haynes, and the insinuation that the band could be close to Satan all speaks to the core of what Butthole Surfers represented. Less of a middle finger to the status quo and more of a fart joke in the annals of art rock. Despite so much going against them achieving mainstream success, the band has continually defied the odds and become one of the most influential underground rock bands of all time.
Your pain makes me hungry. I'm hungry for pain. Your death is mine, motherfucker. Don't even try to escape because you're mine. You are all mine. You're all in my grasp. I will peel you like a potato. I will take off your brains with the throat of my thigh. Oh shit, you're gonna die.
But before all that, they were just two guys. It's almost funny to consider how normal things could have been for the two members at the band's core. Gibby Haynes and guitarist Paul Leary were on the path to normie lives. The two met at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas in the late 1970s. Haynes was the captain of the school's basketball team and named the school's Accountant of the Year. Meanwhile, Leary was pursuing his MBA degree. But Haynes and Leary both gravitated toward outsider art. Gentlemen on the streets, freaks in the sheets of their zines. Their friendship only emboldened each other in wanting to dig deeper and weirder. The two started their own zine called Strange VD that featured images of gross photos of different medical ailments with surreal and fictional descriptions of what the diseases were. Haynes had already graduated and worked at a Texas accounting firm while they were both working on Strange VD and got caught with some of the pictures in the office. He soon left that job and moved to Southern California. Haynes, with only one semester left to go until graduation, dropped out and followed him. The duo didn't really have a plan. For a while, they tried to sell shirts and linens, which featured the visage of Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy who shot JFK. But after their assassin-based clothing business didn't take off, they moved back to San Antonio in 1981 and started to play music. They quickly teamed up with brothers Scott and Quinn Matthews on drums and bass respectively. The group started playing shows around that time, but it took them a minute to land on a name. Each show they took on a different moniker. Names like Ashtray Babyheads, 9-Inch Worm Makes Own Food, Vodka Family Winstons, and The Inalienable Right to Eat Fred Astaire's Asshole. Eventually, they had a name bestowed upon them. Leary recalls that moment in Azarad's Our Band Can Be Your Life, saying, "We had a song called Butthole Surfers, and the guy who was introducing us that night forgot what we were called, so he just called us the Butthole Surfers. It was the band's first paying gig, so they let the name stick." With a full band and a salacious name, the band finally started to not take off at all. San Antonio didn't really respond to the band at all. Eventually, the group decided to once again leave Texas and headed for California. It was there that they started to become the live band that they'd eventually be known for. The band's performances became something of a spectacle, something that would grow more and more chaotic and absurd as time went on. Their sets were noisy, twisted, and eventually would involve fire and megaphones. The beautiful chaos of it all attracted Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys, who caught the band at a show in San Francisco. He was so taken back by the band that he invited them to open for the Dead Kennedys at the Whiskey A Go-Go in LA. He also offered to put out a record for the band on his label, Alternative Tentacles, on the basis that they find someone that could lend the band studio time, and the label would pay back the studio after the fact. So the band got some time at Boss Studios back in San Antonio. But just before they entered the studio, Haynes got into a physical fight with drummer Scott Matthews, causing both Scott and his brother Quinn to quit the band right before recording. The band quickly rearranged things, bringing in Bill Jolly on bass and a slew of different drummers, including King Coffee, who would eventually take over as drummer full-time for a number of years. He'd also later be joined by a second drummer, Teresa Nervosa, who would play live with the band, and the two pretended to be siblings for years due to their similar appearance. Eat your hearts out, White Stripes. The sessions at Boss Studio resulted in the band's 1983 debut EP.
I got a stiff upper lip because I'm half dead. The walls of my life are crumbling around me. I'm running and I can't hide, and I might try suicide. This is much. I can't see it. I try to be straight, but it's not me. Don't touch my body. Let's go. No, I'm not in love with money, baby. Get my way. Still pretty junky, man.
The EP is officially called Butthole Surfers, but it's also known as Brown Reason to Live and, of course, how it appears on Kurt's list, PP the Sailor. It's caused confusion among fans ever since. The PP name comes from the side 1 label on the vinyl record, which lists the name as PP the Sailor, as well as a note to play it at 69 RPM. Nice. Brown Reason to Live is also etched into the grooves. The song The Shaw Sleeps in Lee Harvey's Grave also appeared on Kurt's Montage of Heck cassette, one of the many sound collages he would make for himself.
There's a time to shit and a time for God. The last shit I took was pretty fucking high.
With the release of the EP, Butthole Surfers were becoming a legitimate act. They toured heavily and continued writing and recording new material. The band set out to put another album on Alternative Tentacles, but ran into some snags. They recorded their debut album once again at Boss Studios, but studio owner Bob O'Neill refused to release the masters until the label paid him, which they could not afford. The band was unhappy with the situation and found themselves in increasingly dire straits financially. Haynes and Leary claimed they were living in a tool shed at the time. To keep something happening, the band released an EP of live performances called Live PCP EP. Eventually, Touch and Go, a relatively new label at the time, picked up the record and officially released the band's debut album, Psychic, Powerless, Another Man's Sack, in 1984. This is where the band really started to take off. They played a show at Touch and Go headquarters, gaining fans from Sonic Youth, and they weren't the only notable artists who had come to love their music. When the Surfers played in Seattle, Ken Thale of Soundgarden also became a fan. And of course, you already know our podcast namesake loved them.
You want the people to be the people that want the people to love you. You need the people to show the facts instead of getting they charge you. Want the people to be the people they don't need you. You need the people to show the facts they just bleed you. The other man, his face is lost and you're much colder. Then again, the other man, he's much bolder.
The band released their second album, Rembrandt Pussy Horse, in 1986. Though most of the recordings were done right after their first record. It featured the band at their most experimental. The song Creep in the Cellar was recorded over an old 16-track tape that had a country band's recordings already on it. They accidentally kept one of the country band's channels with a backwards violin track, but left it in because they thought it sounded cool.
In the cellar that I'm gonna let in, and he eats in the alley and keeps track of my sins. When he starts talking backwards, your hair starts to spin, then it really freaks me out.
And the song Mark Says Alright features growls from a pit bull that the band owned named Mark Farner of Grand Funk Railroad, who was named after Mark Farner of Grand Funk Railroad. After extensive touring and really nowhere to go, the band settled in Winterville, Georgia, a town just outside of Athens. The band jokes, or maybe isn't joking, that they stalked REM during this time, keeping an eye out for the elusive indie rock stars. But the band took a liking to the place, and even some inspiration. The band rented out a 2-bedroom house and bought an 8-track tape machine and 2 microphones, and just started writing and recording. Free of studio costs or any restraints beyond their own creativity, the band thrived. They also took long breaks to take drugs, believe it or not. The band was getting weirder and wilder, which is saying something. The band were already as outsider as you could get, but the new material was taking them outside of the confines of rock music. They were going fully avant-garde, totally experimental and using samples and backtracking. This was also the first album where Haynes began implementing what he now calls his Gibbytronics vocal effects, that being a mix of delay pedals, echo and reverb modulators, contact mics, and generally just getting weird with it. Of course, this would all become their 1987 album, Locust Abortion Technician, the other Surfers album on Kurt's top 50 list. The record's fusion of punk, heavy metal, and psych influences made many consider it a precursor to grunge. For everything they embodied and had going for them, Butthole Surfers seemed destined to be a cult underground act. I mean, let's not forget, their name was Butthole Surfers, and yet the band completely defied the odds by going mainstream.
I don't mind the sun sometimes, the images it shows. I can taste you on my lips and smell you in my clothes. Cinnamon and sugar and softly spoken lies. You never know just how to look through other people's eyes.
The band signed to Capitol Records in 1991, one of the biggest major labels in the world. They were now label mates with the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and Queen. In 1993, they even recorded an album with the one and only John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, who produced their album Independent Worm Saloon. The record even gave them a minor hit with the song Who Was in My Room Last Night. The band got placements on soundtracks like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, the Spawn movie, and appeared on Beavis and Butthead. Okay, maybe that last one makes sense.
Yes! The Butthole Surfers! Yeah! The Butthole Surfers rule!
They even had a song in a Mission Impossible movie. Tom Cruise and Butthole Surfers are now intrinsically linked. The same year the band got signed to a major label, they were party to another world-changing union. Kurt Cobain attended a Butthole Surfers show when they were playing with L7. It was there that he met the one and only Courtney Love. They exchanged phone numbers and, well, the rest is history. Butthole Surfers' legacy is still ongoing. While the band has been on hiatus since 2016, they've never ruled out getting back together. This year, in fact, they'll be putting out a live album called Live at the Leatherfly, featuring songs going all the way back to their Locust Abortion Technician days. This will be the last piece I personally produced for this series, though we still have a few more episodes and albums to go, so please stay with us. And quickly, I just want to say thank you. And honestly, it feels appropriate for me to end here with Butthole Surfers. These 50 albums have ranged the gamut from classics to the underground, from poppy to ugly, from pristine to simply just weird. And within Butthole Surfers, I find all of that. Kurt's taste was eclectic, so it's not a surprise that a band as eclectic like this would make his list. Butthole Surfers reminds us to live free, to be weird, and defy expectations. I leave this as my final word. Long live Butthole Surfers.
Well, all right. That was Dusty covering Butthole Surfers, a.k.a. PP the Sailor, and Locust Abortion Technician. All right. Where do we start with this? Do you have a first memory of listening to Butthole Surfers?
I have more memories of learning about who Butthole Surfers were. I will be honest, I hate that name so much. Like, that was part of why I signed up. This is the last one I'll be producing for the series, and what a way to go out. But I've always just hated that name, and it really just put me off from wanting to listen to the music. But I do remember my aunt, she was just like total punk, and she'd moved to Portland. It was one of the cases where she left normal and came back, and she had a shaved head and a nail through her ear, and was really into Felix the cat, like all this like punk iconography.
Nice.
And she and her boyfriend were really into stuff like Butthole Surfers, and I just remember hearing that name and being like, ew. I was like a little kid, and it always rubbed me the wrong way. But this was me, like Batman embracing the bat. This was me embracing the Butthole Surfers.
For some reason, the name always intrigued me. Butthole Surfers. I feel like if you were a person into butt stuff, this is kind of like a real catchy name to to fly your butt stuff flag.
By the way, we are 14-year-olds running this podcast.
Speaking of 14-year-olds, I think the thing about the music of Butthole Surfers is that it's more sophomoric than transgressive. Last week, we got into this conversation about transgressive art and going too far about or in regards of swans. And I think that the output of Butthole Surfers is you could say transgressive, but I think it's more like sophomoric potty humor. And the actual music is very interesting and experimental. And if you listen to especially their early stuff, I would say if you listen to any Butthole Surfers release let's say 1990, like you can hear that influence on Nirvana, like without even doing the research that we have. Just hearing that, you'd be like, oh yeah, there's a very straight line between Butthole Surfers and Nirvana.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, for as much as I had this like trepidation around the name and everything, this was one of those episodes where I left being like, I'm a fan now. And I didn't expect that. Like I was so, especially I think maybe more so Locust Abortion Technician. These names are crazy. But that record, I mean, it's like, man, this is like so up my alley in terms of experimental weirdo art.
Yeah.
Like the humor is kind of what it is, but it's almost just like it's the canvas for them to go into these weird places. It's like freedom. Like we're already called the Butthole Surfers. Like kind of nothing matters after that point.
That's the price of entry.
Yes.
The price of entry is, can you deal with a band named the Butthole Surfers? And if you can, then nothing you hear could be much more offensive than that.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's just, that's what I feel from it. We talk about punk as freedom. What could be more free than this band? Like they, especially on Locust Abortion Technician, where they started self-recording themselves, where it really just opened up. Like there were no more barriers, and they were already kind of carrying that flag. And it's just cool. Like it's some of the songs are really catchy, honestly.
Yeah.
And of course, their live performances are almost what they're more known for than the albums. Just the pure mania, hysteria. Like you could maybe equate it to today to like a King Gizzard sort of scenario, maybe of like just the theatrics and like insanity of it all.
And even then, I feel as though King Gizzard is more palatable than the Surfers' live performances. Like, I think in terms of like their gigs. You know, you hear all these crazy stories about like really transgressive stuff that happened at their shows, like, you know, actual sex happening on stage and things of that nature. And yeah, I think what I come to the most in terms of us covering this episode and, you know, doing our research and due diligence and whatnot is that their reputation precedes them. And so you hear all the crazy stories without even knowing what their music sounds like.
Yeah.
And I think that is a way that people are, you know, people find them to be kind of off-putting without actually listening to their songs. And I'm not saying that some of their music isn't off-putting,
Sure.
but I will say that there's a lot of cool, interesting stuff to be found. And like, you don't necessarily equate Butthole Surfers with art punk, because again, we're doing the whole, we as a society tend to do that whole high art versus low art thing, which, you know, if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know, I think it's complete bullshit. But Butthole Surfers took that to another level where they combined this hysteria with sophomoric humor and genuine experimentation to be an art punk band that no one really classifies as such, because we think of art punk as like this studious sort of, you know, MFA sort of stuff, Sonic Youth, Talking Heads, you know, the list goes on. But Butthole Surfers were an art punk band in the truest sense of the form.
Oh, totally. And like, you can see in who they appealed to. I mean, Sonic Youth were fans. Of course, Kurt was a fan. He had a band called Fecal Matter, so of course he's into this. Kim Thale, Soundgarden. Like, there's just the quote unquote smart artistic artists love the because it's good. It's fun. It's interesting. It's what could be more subversive than PP the Sailor? Like, that's about as like it's. I'm repeating myself, but I'm just like kind of inspired by it. Like, I'm not going to go make music that talks about these things, but the freedom is amazing.
There are certain song titles on these albums that would absolutely get us kicked off of the air, by the way. Yes. So we're not going to go into certain songs, but yeah, there's some really great stuff, really artistically daring approaches to recording and songwriting on this EP and this album that, you know, definitely get my thumbs up. I highly recommend it. And if you're looking for something far out there, if you are kind of bored with the current landscape of music where, you know, everything is geared towards consumption, then, you know, definitely check this out, because I cannot say that Butthole Surfers in any way, shape, or form, until, you know, they started flirting with mainstream, you know, alternative stuff, is, you know, their early stuff, which we are covering today, is the opposite of a product.
That's a great way to play it, the opposite of a product. And like, and the fact that they did even have mainstream success at all while calling themselves Butthole Surfers still amazes me. They had a song in like Mission Impossible, like Tom Cruise movie. Like, that's subversion to another level that I just can't help but appreciate.
I remember hearing Pepper on the radio when I was a kid, and it's a real catchy song. It's a jam. And to go back and listen to their earlier output from, you know, Alternative Tentacles and Touch and Go, which again, you know, two very renowned punk labels, if we're talking about success, I think that the difference between Pepper and PP the Sailor is such a vast jump. I think that it's interesting that even early on, even in this period of their quote unquote careers, that they were finding a big audience. And I think that is a testament to the cliche that the cream rises to the top.
Well, I think you summed that up pretty well. That really encapsulates the Butthole Surfers.
Yeah, all right. Well, then let's get out of here. This piece was produced by Dusty Henry. Audio was mixed by Matt Martin. Shout out to Roddy Nikpour, Isabel Khalili, and Larry Mizell Jr. And before we get into our little spiel for donations, I want to shout out a live event that we are doing happening on April 26th. We are finally, this is something I've been hoping that we would do since the beginning of this podcast, but we are going to tape the live finale of the Cobain 50 on April 26th. And I'm so excited to talk to you and the host of our companion podcast, El Cancionero de Kurt, Albina Cabrera. We've got a live performance from Some Surprises, who I am very, very high on. They've put out a couple albums that are incredible. So yeah, if you're in Seattle or going to be in Seattle, look for information on kexp.org/events. We are really, really looking forward to this. I can't gush enough about the fact that we're going to be live in front of our people.
I know. I
doing
can't
the
wait
last episode of this great podcast.
Yeah, we all get to meet face to face. Finally. Say it to our face.
Exactly.
Some Surprises is going to be doing some Nirvana covers, maybe some covers from some of the albums you've heard on this list. It's going to be a great time.
It's going to be a real fun night.
Yeah, check it out on kexp.org/events to get more details on tickets and everything. And if you can't make it, you'll hear it on the podcast eventually.
Yeah.
If you want to make a donation, go to kexp.org/Cobain. You can become an amplifier or make a one-time donation. We always appreciate when you do that. And thank you so much for being here with us. We're in the last home stretch of records. These are our last few. And this has been such an amazing experience. I love doing this every week with you, Martin. And I'm just grateful for this podcast and our listeners. And yeah, we'll catch you on the 26th. And with that, I'm Dusty Henry.
And I'm Martin Douglas. We'll see you next week on the Cobain 50 from listener-powered KEXP, where the music matters. I mean, maybe this is more than the audience would ever want to know about me, but I'm not really into butt stuff. But to